Rain had a way of cleansing cities, but Palermo never stayed clean for long. The water only drove the sins deeper, into alleys and under cobblestones, where the smell of salt and smoke lingered like memory. That night, the rain was relentless. It turned the harbor into a sheet of shifting silver and washed the neon from the restaurants along Via Vittorio Emanuele into long, trembling reflections. Outside La Bella Luna, a beggar sat motionless beneath the awning. A paper cup lay before her, the coins inside drowned by the downpour. Her face was shadowed by a torn hood, her hands trembling just enough to appear human. But beneath the soaked fabric, every heartbeat was measured, every breath counted. She had been sitting there for hours, unseen and unremembered, exactly as she needed to be. To the passing crowd, she was a ghost of poverty. To herself, she was the echo of something sharper, something forged and forgotten. Elena Rossi had died 5 years ago. The file said so. The agency's seal confirmed it. The marble headstone in the military cemetery made it official. But the world had been wrong before. Tonight, she was alive again. Though the word felt foreign, inside the restaurant, laughter rippled through the glass like a cruel echo. The rich dined as the city drowned. Crystal light touched linen and gold. A string quartet hummed beneath the low murmur of power. She could see him through the rain-streaked window. Giovanni Marino, the man they once called the Ghost of Palermo. He sat at the head of the table as if born to rule it. Men twice his age leaned in when he spoke. Women watched him like a storm they couldn't name. Every gesture was calculated restraint, the tilt of a glass, the stillness between words. The kind of authority that didn't need to shout. Elena had studied him once years ago, when he was just a name in a file. Now he was the center of the city's most dangerous equation. Crime, politics, and memory all orbiting the same quiet smile. She wasn't there for revenge. Not exactly. She was there for truth, and perhaps to see if ghosts could bleed. Time had become a strange companion since her supposed death. 5 years of hiding, of shifting names and shadows. She had learned to live like smoke, unseen until the light hit her wrong. Her reflection in a puddle startled her now. The woman who stared back looked nothing like the one who had died. The old scars had softened, the eyes harder. What the agency had built in her was still there. Precision, patience, violence hidden beneath silence. But the soul of it had cracked. The night before, she had received a message on a burner phone left in a train station locker. No sender. No trace. Just coordinates and a time, La Bella Luna. 21:47, and below it, one word, Marino. That was all it took to pull her from exile. She hadn't planned to go inside. Observation was safer, cleaner. But when she saw 4 men step from different streets at the same time, each carrying the same rhythm in their stride, she recognized it immediately. The quiet choreography of death. The agency had trained her to see patterns others ignored. A hand brushing a cuff twice, a shoulder tilt meaning ready, a napkin folded meaning go. The same code she had used once, the same ones that had led her team to slaughter. Lightning split the sky. The reflection of the sea burned white for a heartbeat. Then came the first gunshot. The window shattered inward. Chaos moved like a living thing. People screamed, glasses crashed, chairs overturned. The musicians dropped their instruments, the violin's last note hanging midair before silence drowned it. Giovanni rose slowly amid the storm of motion, the way a lion stands while the savannah burns. His eyes swept the room, cold and assessing. He didn't duck, didn't panic. Elena moved before she thought. The beggar's body fell away like an illusion. The torn coat, the dirt, the trembling hands. In their place, precision and intent returned. Silent as breath, her fingers found the pistol at her ankle. She slid through the doorway as if the chaos parted for her. The first attacker went down before he saw her face. The second tried to reload behind a column. A single shot to the wrist ended it. The third ran, crashing through tables. She caught him in a chokehold and felt the sharp crack of vertebrae beneath her arm. The fourth one didn't run. He watched her when she turned. Recognition burned through the smoke. Luca Ferrani, her mentor. Her betrayal made flesh. He had trained her hands to kill, her eyes to lie, her heart to obey. And then he had sent her team into an ambush from which only she had crawled out alive. Now he stood among the broken glass, smiling faintly, as if she had done exactly what he expected. She didn't hear his words, she only remembered the sound of the gunfire 5 years ago, the screams of her friends as the mountain air filled with blood. And so she shot him. The bullet struck his shoulder. He fell against the window, glass slicing his cheek. The world went still again. Rain blowing in through the shattered frame, lightning painting the ruin in white light. He whispered something she didn't understand then. About ghosts, about tests, about something larger still. Before the life left his eyes, by dawn, Palermo was quiet again. The storm had spent itself. The Bella Luna stood immaculate, as if nothing had happened, the mirrors replaced, the floors scrubbed clean. Only the faint scent of bleach remained, and the memory of what the newspapers called an attempted robbery. Elena watched from across the street, hood pulled low, the steam from her coffee curling into the cold air. The world had erased her again, just as it always did. No name. No witnesses. No truth. She knew Giovanni would survive. Men like him always did, but now they were bound by something neither could undo. The night their ghosts collided far from the restaurant, in a small apartment overlooking the gray sea. She sat before a table littered with old files and faded photographs. One of them showed a young boy. Brown hair, bright eyes, standing in a sunlit field. The same boy she had once pulled from a car explosion during her last mission. The same boy whose existence had doomed her team. She turned the photo over. On the back, written in her own hand, were 2 words. Live free. She hadn't understood them then, but maybe she would now. She folded the picture, slipped it into her jacket, and stepped onto the balcony. The horizon glowed faintly pink as the rain clouds broke. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to stand still. No mission, no orders, no ghosts chasing her through the dark. Somewhere in the city below, engines started. Doors opened, new threats stirred. But she didn't move. The sound faded into distance, swallowed by the sea. She closed her eyes, the wind cold on her face. Whatever came next, she was ready. Because for the first time since dying, Elena Rossi felt alive. And that perhaps was the most dangerous thing of all. Rome looked clean from above, but only because the rot hid beneath marble and money. The streets glittered in late afternoon sun, tourists filling the plazas, cameras raised toward a history that no longer remembered them. Elena walked among them unnoticed, her hood drawn low, her reflection fractured across every boutique window she passed. Each step felt like a question with no safe answer. She had promised herself she would disappear after Palermo. Yet the dead never kept promises for long. She had followed the whisper that came after the gunfire. The consortium. A word that carried the weight of invisible power. Files had vanished overnight. Bank accounts erased. The agency that once owned her had been reborn under another name, another Giovanni in the city of masks. Truth was a luxury no one sold anymore. She rented a room above an antique shop near Piazza Navona, the kind of place where dust held the scent of centuries. There she spread what fragments she still had. Coded reports, photos blurred by rain, a piece of Luca's torn jacket. Every thread pointed to Rome, to the shadows between politics and commerce. Tonight she dreamt of water, of rain against glass, of a boy's voice calling from the dark. She woke with the taste of salt and smoke on her tongue. Some ghosts follow because they're lost, others because they're owed. Giovanni Marino had built empires from silence. After Palermo, silence was the only thing left to him. The restaurant incident had spread through the underground like wildfire. Every rival wanted to know how the untouchable Don had almost died. He had rebuilt fast. New guards, new routes, new lies. But something inside him had shifted. The image of the beggar turning into death itself haunted him. That face, those eyes. He had seen fear in many forms, but hers was the kind born of remembering too much. When a courier delivered a photograph to his desk, Elena crossing Via del Corso, date stamped that morning. He understood 2 things. She was alive, and someone wanted him to know power had taught him many lessons. The first, no coincidence was ever innocent. That night he left his mansion without his convoy, trading the armor of bodyguards for the anonymity of the crowd. Rome at dusk was a labyrinth of gold light and whispered sins. He followed the echo of her presence through the narrow streets until he saw her, still as a statue, staring at the reflection of Saint Agnes in the fountain's water. He didn't speak. Neither did she. But the air between them carried everything unspoken. The blood, the betrayal, the shared survival when she turned and walked away. He followed at a distance. Days became a rhythm of observation and evasion. She sensed him near before she ever saw him. A glint of a watch in a cafe window. A scent of tobacco she had memorized years ago. First she let it happen. Maybe part of her wanted proof that he had survived her silence. But when a second tale appeared, two men in plain suits, the kind with no faces and no future, she realized the game had widened. They weren't his. They were too clean, too precise. Agency men. Or what had replaced it. She led them through Trastevere's alleys, under laundry lines that dripped like veins. When they cornered her near the river, she moved like muscle memory. One strike, one throw, one body in the water. The other fled before she spoke. The city swallowed the sound. Indifferent as ever. Later in her room, she found an envelope pushed under the door. Inside, a note typed on old paper. Stop looking for ghosts. The consortium is already looking for you, and beneath it, a single photograph. Giovanni, standing in the same square that morning, a red X drawn over his heart. Giovanni's office overlooked the Tiber. From there he controlled half the city's black market. Yet tonight he felt more like prey than predator. When Elena stepped through the door without knocking, the guards outside never saw her. She moved with a kind of authority that ignored permission. The meeting that followed wasn't of words. It was of truths too sharp to voice. She placed the photograph on his desk. He studied it, expression unreadable. Outside, sirens rose and fell like a heartbeat. They both knew what it meant. Someone wanted them erased, not killed, erased. Without speaking, they began to work. For days they mapped the pattern of recent assassinations, the financial threads behind them, the silent corporations funneling money through offshore accounts. Every path led to the same invisible circle of power, the consortium. The name appeared nowhere official, yet its fingerprints marked every system. Weapons, data, politics, art. It was not an organization but an ecosystem. Self-sustaining, omnipresent, feeding on fear. Elena traced the accounts with surgical precision. Giovanni supplied names, favors, safe houses. The partnership was born not of trust but necessity, and somewhere between midnight and dawn, necessity began to feel like something dangerously close to belief. The lead came from Zurich, a bank too quiet to be honest. Within its encrypted servers was a file labeled Project Legacy. When Elena cracked the code, the screen filled with faces, agents long presumed dead. Among them, a small image froze her breath. Boy. Older now, maybe 13, eyes still carrying the same sunlight. The file tagged him as Asset 07, active. Her hands shook. All the years of hiding, all the ghosts she had buried. And he had never been safe. She booked a flight before Giovanni could argue. He followed anyway. Zurich was all glass and snow, a city that pretended to be neutral while selling secrets to both sides. They moved through its cold corridors, shadows against brighter ghosts. What they found in the bank's sublevel wasn't money. It was memory. DNA records, surveillance footage, contracts signed by people who no longer existed. The consortium hadn't destroyed the agency. It had become it. And Luca Ferrani was still alive. They met him beneath the mountains, in a chalet that smelled of cedar and blood. His shoulder bore a scar where her bullet had kissed him, but his smile hadn't aged. He spoke of a world reborn, of order through control. The consortium wasn't evil, he said. It was evolution. Governments were chaos. Men like him brought symmetry. Elena listened until the words became static. Then she asked about the boy. Luca's smile faltered. He told her the child was part of something larger. A generation raised to replace the old operatives, perfect soldiers shaped from the DNA of ghosts. Project Legacy was the future. And she, Elena Rossi, was their proof that resurrection worked. Giovanni moved first, gun drawn. The room exploded into violence, wood splintering, snow flooding through broken glass, the night burning white with muzzle flash. When it was over, Luca was gone again, vanishing into the storm, and they were left with nothing but echoes. Rome turned against them the moment they returned. A senator was found dead, and their names painted across the headlines. Assassins wore badges now. Cameras followed their ghosts through every street. The consortium had rewritten reality, turning saviors into villains with a single broadcast. They ran south. Trains, safe houses, forgotten churches. In the ruins of Pompeii, they waited out a storm, the air heavy with ash and memory. Elena no longer knew whether she was running from the past or toward it. Giovanni watched her from the shadows, seeing not the agent or the beggar, but the fracture between both when the rain finally stopped. He told her they had only two choices left: disappear forever, or burn everything that hunted them. She looked toward the horizon, where lightning danced over the sea for the first time. She didn't flinch from a boardroom high above London. 12 silhouettes watched their flight unfold on satellite screens. She survived again, one said. Good, replied another. That means the experiment works. In the reflection of the glass, their faces remained hidden. The consortium did not fear ghosts. It created them. They vanished into Europe like smoke through keyholes. Each border crossed erased another name, another version of themselves. In Vienna they became merchants. In Prague art dealers. In Istanbul, no one at all. The world still believed the headlines. Two fugitives, killers of a senator, ghosts responsible for a war that hadn't yet begun. The consortium had rewritten their lives into a cautionary tale, and the world had believed it. But truth doesn't die so easily. It hides in cracks, in quiet rooms, in the hands of those who refuse to let it go. Every city gave them fragments. Encrypted drives, whispered rumors, faces that disappeared before sunrise. Each clue led to the same conclusion. The consortium was not simply manipulating governments. It was the government, in every form that mattered. Giovanni's old empire was dissolving beneath him. Allies grew silent, accounts frozen, promises revoked. Even his enemies refused to acknowledge his existence, as if a hand had wiped his name clean from every ledger. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be powerless. For the first time in hers, Elena understood what it meant to have something worth saving. They found Mira in an underground club beneath Berlin, a hacker with eyes that glowed blue from too many screens, her laughter sharp as broken code. She owed Elena a debt from another lifetime, the kind paid not with money but with silence. When Elena appeared at her door, Mira didn't ask how she'd survived, only why she'd come. For 3 days, the room became a cathedral of light, and data lines of code cascaded like rain, and beneath them, the truth began to take shape. Every agent who had died during the agency's fall had been catalogued, their DNA stored, their memories harvested. It was Project Lazarus, an attempt to engineer operatives who could be resurrected, rebuilt, controlled. The file that bore Elena's name was marked Active Prototype. She had never truly escaped. Her life had been the experiment. When she saw the timestamp of her supposed death, the same day the boy had been extracted, the world tilted. Every loss, every scar, every breath since then had been orchestrated. Giovanni stood behind her, silent. He had lived in control his whole life. Now he was staring at someone who had never possessed it. They left Berlin behind under new names, their path winding toward the city between continents. Istanbul glimmered like a jewel half submerged in dusk, the call to prayer rising over the Bosphorus, the sound ancient and mournful here. The consortium's influence was rumor and religion. Its agents moved through mosques and markets, cloaked in piety and profit. Elena and Giovanni took refuge in a crumbling mansion once owned by a poet who believed words could defy death. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Tonight, she would walk the balcony, tracing the scars on her arm as if each line were a story she hadn't finished writing. Giovanni would watch from the shadows, the faint glow of a cigarette marking his place in the dark. They spoke little. Words had become currency too costly to spend. But sometimes silence said what neither dared admit, that the space between them was shrinking, dangerous in its pull. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, two ghosts waited for their war to begin. The consortium struck first. At dawn, the mansion erupted. Fire blooming through stained glass, ancient verses turned to ash. They barely escaped. Mira dragged half-conscious through the smoke, her laptop clutched to her chest like a dying heart. By the time the sun rose, their faces were on every border screen again. The world believed the fugitives had returned to finish what they started. In the ruins of the city's outskirts, Elena watched the smoke twist upward and wondered if identity was just another weapon. She had worn so many names she no longer trusted any of them. Her own sounded foreign in her mouth. Giovanni stood beside her. His shirt burned at the shoulder, the smell of smoke and blood between them. For all his power, he looked human now, fallible, finite. The fall of his empire had stripped him bare, but somewhere beneath the ruin, she saw something like redemption struggling to breathe. They didn't speak of what came next. They just walked until the sea appeared again, endless and gray. Myra's recovery was slow. While she healed, her code continued to work. Autonomous, relentless. It began leaking fragments of consortium data to journalists, whistleblowers, forgotten activists. One by one, stories surfaced. Corruption exposed. Names made public. The world began to suspect the truth, that the same hand moved every chess piece. The consortium responded with violence disguised as order. Bank collapses, assassinations, new wars. All convenient, all controlled. Elena realized the only way to kill a ghost was to make it visible. They planned their strike not as an assault but as a revelation. If they could upload Myra's full archive, every lie would unravel at once. But to reach the server core, they would have to return to where it had begun, the underground facility hidden beneath the Mediterranean coast. Luca would be waiting. The journey south was a pilgrimage of scars. Each mile felt like walking backward through her own grave. When they reached the coast, storm clouds rolled in like summoned judgment. The facility lay buried beneath a decommissioned naval base, its entrance disguised as a forgotten pier. Inside, the corridors smelled of steel and ghosts. Her hand trembled as she touched the walls. Every echo a memory, every shadow a face she had lost. They moved together in silence, the rhythm of years of survival between them. Mira remained at the surface, transmitting data through static channels, her voice a ghost in their earpieces. The heart of the compound. The hum of servers sounded like a heartbeat too large to belong to any one thing. It was there, in the pulsing light, that they found him, Luca Ferrani, alive. Waiting. He looked older now, not weaker, just carved deeper by time. The scar on his shoulder was a red map of everything that had gone wrong, and no words were needed. The room itself spoke of unfinished truths. He told them the consortium had always been inevitable. Governments were unstable. Ideals were temporary. Power needed permanence. They had found it in data, in control, in rebirth. Elena listened, her silence sharper than any weapon. Giovanni's gun hung at his side. Forgotten. Luca said her death had proven the theory, that even broken things could be rebuilt. He called her proof of concept. And that was when something inside her snapped. She lunged forward, not as an agent but as everything the experiment had failed to kill. The woman who had loved, lost, endured. The struggle was silent and brutal. The gunfire brief. When it ended, Luca lay on the floor, blood pooling beneath his hand, eyes wide as if he had finally seen her for who she was. Not a ghost, not a weapon, but a survivor. Giovanni pulled her back before she fell with him. The alarm screamed, lights turned red. They had 10 minutes to finish what they came for. They reached the core chamber, the air electric with power. Myra's voice cracked through the comms, counting down. Elena connected the drive. Fingers steady despite the chaos. Lines of code streamed upward, filling the screens with everything the world was never meant to see. Assassinations disguised as accidents, wars built for profit, governments built from lies. The truth tore through the network like light. Through glass. Outside, explosions thundered. The consortium was erasing itself before the infection could spread. Giovanni pulled her toward the exit as flames chased them down the corridor. At the threshold, she looked back, the servers collapsing, the ghosts burning with them. Then the floor gave way. They woke to salt and silence. The facility was gone, swallowed by the Mediterranean. The shore stretched endless and gray. Giovanni's hand found hers, cold but alive. In the distance, smoke curled upward like the final breath of a dying world. The upload had succeeded. The truth was out. The consortium's name filled every headline, every broadcast, every whispered conversation. But truth came at a cost. Mira was gone. Luca was gone. Everything they had been before was gone. Elena watched the horizon, the same horizon she had watched so many times before, and wondered if peace was just another kind of exile. Giovanni rose slowly, offered her a hand. Together they walked inland, leaving footprints that the tide would soon erase. Weeks later, in a small town by the border, she found a newspaper folded on a cafe table. The front page carried no photograph of her, no mention of Giovanni, just headlines about collapsing markets, resignations, investigations. The world was trying to rebuild a conscience. She turned the page. There, in a small column, a single photograph of a boy, smiling under the caption "Survivor of Agency Project Found Safe." For the first time in years she smiled. Outside, the air smelled of rain again, but softer now, like something that could wash away rather than drown. Giovanni sat across the street, reading his own newspaper, pretending not to watch her. She let him pretend. When she rose to leave, she didn't look back. Some ghosts deserved to rest. The war ended without headlines, no treaties, no flags, no victory. Only silence. The world was too busy pretending not to notice how close it had come to collapse. The consortium's name had become myth, whispered by journalists, denied by politicians, buried by corporations. But something had shifted. People started asking questions that couldn't be unasked, and in the quiet spaces between those questions, freedom began. Hesitant, fragile, alive. Elena lived beneath a borrowed name again, a small apartment above a florist's shop in Lisbon. The morning smelled of jasmine and wet pavement. She didn't wear a weapon anymore. Didn't need to. The scars on her arms had faded, but she still traced them sometimes. Reminders of the life that had built her and the one she had survived. Giovanni's whereabouts were unknown. Some said he was seen in Greece, others in Morocco. Every rumor felt like a heartbeat she refused to chase. She had learned that some ghosts should remain untethered. A year passed. Then one morning, a letter appeared at her door. No stamp, no sender. Just her name, Elena. Inside, one photograph. A seaside villa. Empty. And a single line written on the back. "The sea remembers." She stared at it until the ink blurred. Then she packed a single bag and left without locking the door. The journey south felt like walking through the echoes of another life. Cities that had once been hiding places, now just postcards of memory. When she reached the coast, the villa was exactly as pictured. Dust and silence. The sea stretching endless beyond the broken windows. She knew before stepping inside that he was there. Giovanni looked older. The kind of older that doesn't come from time, but from peace. Wrestled out of chaos. His hair was streaked with gray now, his shirt unbuttoned as always, the tattoos faded but fierce. He smiled when he saw her, slow and genuine, the kind of smile that remembers pain but chooses warmth anyway. "You found it," he said. "You sent it," she answered. They stood there, the sea whispering through the windows, and for a moment the world felt mercifully small. He poured her wine, red as dusk. They talked about nothing, the weather, the waves, the stubbornness of seagulls. But beneath every word was the weight of everything they weren't saying. When night came, they sat on the balcony where the sea met the stars. No declarations, no apologies, just silence, shared like truth. The next morning, Elena woke to find him gone from the room, but not from the world. His voice called her name from the beach below. He was building something, a small wooden boat, hand-carved, imperfect. "You're building an escape?" she asked. "A memory," he said. "One that floats." For days they worked together, cutting, sanding, shaping. It wasn't about the boat. It was about time, about learning to build something that didn't destroy it. In the evenings, they would walk along the shore, the sand cold under their feet. He told her about the others who had survived, the loyal few scattered across continents, building new lives under borrowed names. She listened, but her mind wandered. Because freedom, she realized, wasn't about escaping chains. It was about learning to live without needing them. One night, the storm came. The kind that makes the world feel like it's breaking open again. The waves tore at the shore, wind howling through the villa's bones. Inside, the power flickered and died. Giovanni found her by candlelight, his face carved in gold and shadow. He handed her a small drive, silver, engraved with an old crest. "It's everything that's left," he said. "Names, accounts, the rest of their network. If it resurfaces, you'll know where to find it." "Why me?" she asked. "Because you'll do what I can't. You'll walk away." She wanted to argue, But in his eyes she saw the same resolve that had carried them through fire and blood. Only softer now. He leaned forward, pressed a kiss to her forehead and whispered, "You were never my weakness, Elena. You were the proof I could still feel." When she looked up, he was already gone into the rain. Dawn came pale and quiet. The storm had passed, leaving the beach littered with debris and memory. The boat they'd built was gone. Only fragments remained. A plank, a rope, a carved piece of wood with her name burned faintly into it. She knew what it meant. He had gone back to the sea, to the place that had first given him peace, the sea that erased sins and names alike. She walked to the edge of the water, the waves cold against her skin, and let the drive fall from her hand. The ocean swallowed it whole. "Let it end," she whispered. And for the first time in her life, it did. Years passed like soft rain. Elena moved inland, into the quiet heart of Spain. She opened a small bookstore, the kind that smells of dust and comfort. She never advertised. People simply found it, the way lost things do. Sometimes travelers came asking for stories about the Mafia wars. She would smile, shake her head, and say, "They were all ghosts in the end." At night, she would stand by the window and watch the stars reflected in glass, wondering if somewhere across some distant shore, a man with faded tattoos was watching the same sky. One autumn morning, a boy entered her shop. Tall, dark-haired, eyes too old for his age. He looked at her like he'd known her his whole life. Then he placed a single white rose on the counter. "He said you'd understand," the boy whispered. Her breath caught. No name, no note. Just the rose. She touched its stem. Thorns soft against her fingers. For a moment, she felt the sea again. The endless gray, the echo of gunfire, the warmth of a man who had given up everything to protect what little light the world still had. Tears didn't fall. They didn't need to. Some endings are too sacred for sound. She placed the rose in a vase beside the window. And as the first light of dawn touched its petals, she whispered, "You're free now." The bell above the door chimed softly. The boy was gone. Only the sea's whisper remained. Years later, an old woman walked the same shore where a villa once stood. The sea had reclaimed it all. The walls, the balcony, the life between. She stopped where the sand met the tide. Eyes closed, the wind carried the scent of jasmine and salt. Somewhere far beneath the waves, the past slept in peace. She smiled, whispered his name one last time, and let the wind take it. And as the tide rose around her feet, the horizon burned gold. Not with fire this time, but with morning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful Mafia stories filled with emotion, betrayal, and passion. Tell us in the comments, what part of Mafia Hearts hit you the hardest? Thanks for watching, and remember, every love written in blood still beats in the end. See you in the next episode, only on Mafia Hearts.